Bring the lights down low, it's time to show. Lights, camera, you know what we mean. Behold the magic of the silver screen. Some movies rock, some movies shock. They're powerful, alright. We cover them all on your favorite part. So many movies we can't choose. Even when you win, you lose. Life moves pretty fast. Some will fizzle and some movies last. I understood there would be no math. It's the 30-something movie podcast. Be excellent to each other. Peace out and word to your mother. They're from the best decades. Movie magic that never fades. Lightsabers clash, phasers set to stun. Action packed from dusk till dawn. We have deep thoughts and questions free. Come share our love of the movies we see. Life moves pretty fast. Some will fizzle and some movies last. I understood there would be no math. It's the 30-something movie podcast.
I don't know why that guitar solo, for some reason, that guitar solo that comes in right there, it makes me think of Freddie Prinze Jr. I don't know why.
Yeah, I think because he was in a bunch of movies back then that sounded like that.
I feel like that's the sound. That's the sound of that's the what I'm blanking on the term, the non-diegetic music that Freddie Prinze Jr. should be walking around to.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
There's another term for you.
Dennis would know the word we're looking for. But
I know, and normally I know it. I just for some reason had a little bit of a brain hiccup there. So, well, it's a 30-something movie podcast. I don't care if it's diegetic, non-diegetic, diabetic, non-diabetic. Whether Wilford Brimley is helping you get your supplies, or I don't know what's going on, but
it's
it is
all in.
It is whatever it is.
Wilford Brimley.
Yes,
that is not a name you hear mentioned that often on the pod.
I don't know what kind of house you live in. Oh, on the pod. Okay.
Yeah.
We talk about Wilford Brimley at least 2 or 3 times a week.
Okay, that's a little strange.
Why?
But I don't know. It just is.
You don't like to cherish national icons?
Well, I mean, he's fine and all. National icon seems like a stretch, but
I don't know. Every time I eat oatmeal and reorder my diabetes testing supplies, I think of him.
That's fair. Yeah. That's fair.
All right.
So they can help you live a better
life. Speaking of music and diegetic music and so forth, the soundtrack show had a new episode this summer. It completed the Star Trek thing he was doing.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's a 3-part and it's stretched from like spring into the last one was July, I think.
Oh, nice.
But it covers Star Trek from the original series, the music.
Okay. No, I had not. I've got like a backlog of stuff to listen to. So that's probably in my queue somewhere.
I mean, and so it's a pretty awesome deep dive into the music of the original series, but then also just kind of like how television scoring and music and all that works. And yeah it's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome series of episodes.
Yeah. Okay. I'll check it out. We are going to spoil here. Our movie this time is Forrest Gump. And I don't know who wouldn't have seen Forrest Gump at this point. I feel like everybody should have seen Forrest Gump at this point.
Forrest Gump.
Right. Spoiling is as spoiling does. So we're going to spoil freely as we talk here, so just be aware. If you have not already, visit our website, 30podcast.com. You can leave a rating, a voicemail. You can become a co-executive producer via Patreon, which we have a growing group of co-executive producers there, so that's been a lot of fun. I've been sharing some stuff with our co-executive producers over there, shared with them the list of potential movies for next year, so they're going to be able to put their votes in for that. And we'll be able to get that list going in not too long and then share it out with the general public here probably within maybe the next month or so. So people can go to our website and vote for the upcoming slate of movies for next year. Also had a chance to do a little messaging back and forth with our buddy Podrick over in Ireland. And we're going to find a good time because of the time difference and all that. We're going to find a good time, but he's going to come on the show probably here in not too long. He's got a movie that he wanted to talk about with us. So
nice.
Going to use his Patreon benefits to come on the show with us. And he's got a good movie.
Which movie, or are we keeping that under wraps?
That's an excellent question. let me see. Let me see if I can find it real fast because he had mentioned a specific movie, and I believe he was thinking of possibly the movie Greedy with Michael J. Fox.
Nice.
Okay.
Which I think he said he might have recommended to you at one point in time, Pat.
Yes.
Okay.
And so this will be a great opportunity because I unfortunately, or fortunately, unfortunately I have not seen it yet, but fortunately I get to do it for this go around. So that'll be really fun. That was kind of, I think you mentioned this when we were talking podcasts, either right when we started recording or earlier. You said there's a backlog of things, and that's on the backlog. So that'll be awesome.
Yeah. No, that'll be cool. I did also want to mention, I believe we reposted it. He's posted it to his Twitter account or X account or whatever you want to call it at this point. He found some photos and some scrapbook stuff of in some of his dad's stuff, and it's photos of some of his work on the set of It's a Mad, 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 Mad World.
Oh, wow.
So he posted some of that up to Twitter the other day. So that was really cool. And I reposted it from our account, so you can probably find it from there too. But he posted that. Cool. I was like, oh, that's cool to see those photos.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
So as always, thank you to our Patreon co-executive producers helping to keep the lights on, keep the show running here. We really, really, truly just are so appreciative of all the support, whether you are supporting financially, whether you're supporting by telling friends about the show so that other people can find it. If you're leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast, that is super, super helpful for us. So thank you so much for doing that. Every little bit of that helps. So gracias, senors and senoritas.
See.
I took French, so I don't know that I know too much more beyond that. But let's see. So we're talking Forrest Gump tonight. I'm gonna jump in a time machine real quick. Pat, wasn't that so much fun to talk about Deadpool and Wolverine last week?
It was excellent to talk about Deadpool and Wolverine last week.
It was. Honestly, Pat, I think that might have been the funniest you've ever been.
Hey, man, I'm just going to try to live up to it. That's all I'll say about that.
Wow. I mean, when people go back and listen to that
That's
previous
all I
episode.
have to say about that.
When people go back and listen to that previous episode before this one, they will be astonished at just, I mean, that was Pat Unleashed is what that was.
High expectations. Expectations.
I feel like I'm causing a problem.
No, not at all. This is, I feel like the time variance authority is going to show up and tell us we're out of whack. But no, I don't think you're causing problems at all.
I feel like I'm setting the bar high, and like a French pole vaulter, you're going to hit it, Pat.
Let me tell you, man, that pole vaulter was pretty impressive. I'll tell you that. At least I'm talking about the one that won the gold. I'm not sure if we're talking about the same. In fact, now I know we're not talking about the same pole vaulter.
That's okay. Keep talking, Pat. This is great stuff.
This is podcasting. This is what the folks turn into. We just thanked our Patreons who are probably all running for the exit now, asking for their money back. But
as the Beverly Hillbillies used to say, this is podcast gold, Texas tea.
That's it.
Yeah.
Oh.
All right. Well, we're not here to talk about the Beverly Hillbillies. We are here to head to the south a bit. We're here to head to Greenbow, Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll go ahead and jump on into our trivia pursuits section of this one. This one came out on July 6th, 1994, rated PG-13, 2 hours, 22 minutes, directed by Robert Zemeckis, who did Back to the Future and Castaway. Writer was Eric Roth, based on the book by Winston Groom. I think Winston was his first name. And Eric Roth did The Insider and 2018 version of A Star is Born. Producers were Wendy Feynman, who did Drumline and Fair Game, Steve Starkey, who did Contact and Flight, Steve Tisch, who did Risky Business and American History X. Composer was Alan Silvestri, who did The Avengers and Predator. Cinematographer was Don Burgess, who did Spider-Man and The Polar Express. Editor was Arthur Schmidt, who did Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. Production company was Paramount Pictures. Budget $55 million. Box office $678.2 million. So it did fine. That'll do, Pig. That'll do.
Indeed.
Cinema Score gives it an A+. Flick Metrics gives it an 83%. Tom Hanks plays Forrest Gump. He was in Saving Private Ryan and Castaway. Robin Wright plays Jenny Curran. She was in The Princess Bride and the House of Cards TV series. Gary Sinise plays Lieutenant Dan. He was in Apollo 13 and Ransom. Mykelti Williamson played Bubba Blue. He was in Heat and Con Air. Sally Field was Mrs. Gump. She was in Steel Magnolias and Lincoln. Michael Connor Humphreys played Young Forrest. He was in Pathfinders and Little Heaven. Haley Joel Osment played Forrest Jr. He was in The Sixth Sense and AI, Artificial Intelligence. I need to go back and watch that movie. I wonder how that movie has fared in the years since AI has become a bigger thing.
Yeah, that's a good one.
No. I'll have to go back and look. Peter Dobson played Elvis Presley. He was in Last Exit to Brooklyn and The Frighteners. Dick Cavett played himself. He was in Annie Hall and Beetlejuice. Sam Anderson played Principal Hancock. He was in La Bamba and Water for Elephants. Jeffrey Blake was Wesley. He was in Young Guns and Contact. The irony, though, that Robin Wright would have a love interest in this movie whose name is Wesley.
Mm-hmm.
Connections. And then Siobhan Fallon Hogan played the school bus driver. She was in Men in Black and The Negotiator. There was a lot of trivia for this one. A lot of this will probably just come out as we're talking about the movie, but it did win 6 Academy Awards: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor for Tom Hanks were just some of them. The line, "Life was like a box of chocolates," is ranked number 40 on the American Film Institute's list of top 100 movie quotes. The bench where Forrest sits during much of the movie's narration is now a popular tourist attraction in Savannah, Georgia. And one of the other ones I thought was kind of interesting is John Travolta was originally considered to play the part of Forrest Gump. That was kind of interesting. I'm trying to remember which movie it was. There was a movie a little bit later in the 90s, maybe 96 or 97, called Phenomenon. And,
yes.
And I feel like, doesn't he play a semi-uneducated or lesser educated person who something happens to him and he is ridiculously smart and almost has these powers that border on supernatural? And
is it a brain tumor?
It ends up. Oh, thanks for spoiling it, Bo.
Oh, please.
Yes, it's a brain tumor.
You just gave the disclaimer.
I know.
Didn't you?
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
We can go
wait
back
a minute.
and
Did
edit
I beat the disclaimer?
No. John can, in his editing, he can work editing wonders and make sure that that's all cleared
Pat,
up.
what was that line from Dragon, the Bruce Lee story? My goal is to have no technique.
That's right.
That's my editing. That's my editing goal too. That's my technique. Okay. My editing technique is to have no technique. Okay,
I get you. All right, I hear you.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Now that the spoilers are out, I think you just confirmed too.
Yes.
He had a tumor. I think he was just an average guy though. I don't know that he was like what's portrayed with Forrest Gump, but he was basically just a guy.
Yeah, no, not to the same degree as Forrest Gump, but I feel like the way he played that character at the beginning of the movie, where he was supposed to be just kind of like the average Joe, I feel like if he had been Forrest Gump, it wouldn't have been too much a leap for him to play that character.
Right. Yeah, this is one of those roles, and I saw that he was looking, and I saw that there was like the short list of people that they were trying to get to play this, and this is one of those roles I can't imagine anyone other than Tom Hanks doing this.
Right.
I just can't even wrap my brain around it.
Yeah. All right. Synopsis for this one. In a world of chaos and uncertainty, one man, Forrest Gump, takes life one step at a time. With his best friend Bubba, the love of his life Jenny, and the loyal Lieutenant Dan, Forrest's extraordinary journey will inspire you to believe in the power of destiny.
Hello, my name's Forrest Gump. Would you like a chocolate?
Oh, thank you.
It's funny what a young man recollects.
You're the same as everybody else. You are no different.
Your boy's different.
Are you stupid or something? Mama says stupid as stupid does. I'm Jenny. I'm Forrest Gump.
She was my most special friend. my only friend. We was together all the time. We was like peas and carrots, Jenny and I.
Run, Forrest!
Hey, stupid!
Run!
Now, you wouldn't believe it if I told you, but I could run like the wind blows.
Who in the hell is that?
That there's Forrest Gump, Coach. Just a local idiot. I never thought it would take me anywhere. They even put me on a thing called the All-America Team, where you get to meet the President of the United States.
Congratulations. How does it feel to be an All-American?
I gotta pee.
I believe he said he had to go pee.
Now, maybe it's just me, but college was very confusing times.
Have you ever been with a girl, Forrest?
I sit next to them in my home economics class all the time.
Have you given any thought to your future?
Go! What's your sole purpose in this army?
To do whatever you tell me, drill sergeant?
You're a damn genius. You are going to be a general someday, go.
Yes, drill sergeant! They sending me to Vietnam.
Listen, you promised me something, okay? If you're ever in trouble, don't try to be brave. You just run, okay?
Okay. Where are you boys from in the world?
Alabama, sir.
You twins?
No, we are not relations, sir. For some reason, what I was doing seemed to make sense to people.
Forget about me and get yourself out!
Been awarded the Medal of Honor.
How come? Now, my mom was always telling me how miracles happen every day. Some people don't think so.
Jenny!
But they do. You can come home with me at my house in Greenbow. I'll take care of you.
Why are you so good to me?
You're my girl.
Paramount Pictures presents Tom Hanks.
I'm not a smart man, but I know what love is.
Robin Wright.
Will you marry me? I'd make a good husband, Jenny.
You would, Forrest.
But you won't marry me.
Gary Sinise.
I never thanked you for saving my life.
And Sally Field.
My boy Forrest is going to get the same opportunities as everyone else.
A film by Robert Zemeckis.
What's my destiny, Mom?
You're gonna have to figure that out for yourself.
The world will never seem the same once you've seen it through the eyes of Forrest Gump.
My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get.
All right, for this one, yeah.
Before you, I want to have a moment with the trailer here.
Yeah.
First of all, it was a really long trailer, so that was the long version. But and yeah, there are a lot of lines in this movie, but did they just put them all in the trailer?
Probably.
Like that was, I got to be honest, I'm a little disappointed hearing that trailer post having seen the movie.
That is, I believe, the original trailer. Wow. So it is the original trailer from '94.
That is a shame and a half.
Yeah.
Because, like, you spoiled some of the best stuff.
Yeah.
Huh. That's kind of disappointing.
Yeah, I almost feel like they were planning that maybe the only time people would see that was in theaters. It wasn't like you're going to watch it 18 times. Like, that's the only thing as you're talking about that I can think of is that now, now we'd watch it 1,000,001 times. So, okay, we know everything that's going to happen in the trailer. Mm-hmm. But like that back then, maybe, hey, I only see it when I go to a movie or, so it almost became like a featurette. But yeah, I mean, they had the lot, talked about Lieutenant Dan saving his life. Well, okay, we don't need to, no cliffhanger there. I mean,
yeah.
We could just we can skip Vietnam at this point. Like we already know what.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was kind of rough.
Which I will say, you said skip Vietnam. That was something interesting. I was reading some trivia about this, that I guess the higher ups at the movie studio wanted them to not include anything to do with Vietnam, running, or shrimping on the boat.
Oh,
for God's sake.
They didn't want any of that. Well, yeah. And I guess that it was Zemeckis, right?
Yeah.
Zemeckis and Tom Hanks, they did it in secret, so like they I don't know how they did it with like the big set pieces, like the Vietnam War and the shrimping, but they put that in and then showed the test footage to the, and then they begrudgingly got approval. Or no, that's what it was. They actually funded it themselves. Like they didn't take their fees.
I remember that.
So that they could, and then but somehow they worked something into where they got a percentage of the whatevers, and that, they did quite well. But they sacrificed their fees to fit. And then for the running thing, they did it in secret and like used Tom Hanks's brother as one of the running body doubles for running. So it's funny that you mentioned like skip over Vietnam. That's what the studio wanted to do. It's like, oh, you just don't put that stuff in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That big thing that everyone knows happened. Let's skip that.
And okay. And I'm sorry, I was doing a bunch of trivia reading. John Goodman was one of the people they thought of for Forrest Gump as well.
Yes.
Because supposedly okay. So it was, because that matches more of like the way the character was what the character was in the book.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I was going to say about the trailer
the problem with that was, he might have bowled on Shabbos, which
is true.
You don't bowl on Shabbos.
No.
So I which actually reminds me, my mother-in-law was house sitting the other day for a Pomeranian, or dog sitting for a Pomeranian. And all I could think of was, are you going to take it bowling?
Yeah. At that point, you've got to think that, like, you can't not.
And then John, you quoted Bruce Lee. So I'm just going to throw in there, that music was Dragon's Heartbeat from the Dragon, the Bruce Lee story. So that was fun hearing that music. It worked for the trailer, but
I'm not going to quote it myself, but when you talked about Vietnam and like how did they do that in secret, I'm thinking of like the massive explosions and pyrotechnics they had, which then makes me think of the scenes in Tropic Thunder when they're setting off the explosives, which makes me think this movie was referenced in Tropic Thunder.
Yes,
in the whole speech where you never go full.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Tom Hanks, Forrest Gump, slow, yes. Braces on his legs, but he charmed the pants off Nixon, and he won a ping pong competition.
Yeah. So anyways, I didn't mean to delve too deep with a bunch of the trivia and stuff I read, but that was, your point is exactly on it. It was like, that was like a little featurette of the movie,
Yeah. Like it's almost like a highlight reel for the Oscars, not so much a trailer.
It should have started with, in a world where it's for your consideration.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, wow. It makes you wonder, because I know I've walked out of movies before at the end and I've been like, yeah, so that was fun, but I knew all that going in because they showed it to me all ahead of time.
Yeah.
And not a fan is all I'm saying.
I hear you. I think we listened on here to the original Star Wars, like before it was Star Wars 4, A New Hope Star Wars, but just Star Wars.
Yep.
The trailer for Star Wars, and it's like you can watch that 1,000,001 times and you don't have a clue what's going to happen in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Or wasn't the original trailer for Superman just like flying through the clouds? Like you didn't actually see anybody fly. It's just like the camera is flying through. You'll believe a man can fly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That Forrest Gump trailer was Jenny minus the guitar. There wasn't much hidden.
It's you make the point in very clear terms. Exactly.
Pat, I always try to say things in a way that you can understand.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Major moments. We broke this down into 10 major moments, so you don't have to. Number one, Forrest Gump, and this kind of goes along a little bit of a timeline because I'm always curious about the years for this, and so I was able to kind of pull roughly what I think the years were supposed to be for these different segments of the movie. So his childhood and the friendship with Jenny is I think kind of around 1951, early 1950s. He's growing up in Greenbow, Alabama, leg braces, low intelligence. And despite these things, he meets Jenny on the school bus. That's his first and closest friend. And eventually, a little bit later on, he astonishes everybody by breaking free from those leg braces and discovering his talent for running. Before we go to the next major moment, though, I want to talk a little bit about this kid that played young Forrest. And one of the most fascinating things I think I've ever read about a movie was how Tom Hanks came up with his character of Forrest Gump and how he came up with the mannerisms and the speech pattern and cadence and everything else. When they found the child actor that was going to play young Forrest Gump, this is the way he spoke when he was saying his lines as young Forrest Gump, the child. And so Tom Hanks was like, well, why would I do anything different? This kid's great. Like, I love the way this kid, like the way he holds his hands when he's standing and the way he walks and the way he talks. So Tom Hanks would sit with this kid and just like start recording in a tape recorder and have conversations with him. And he was like, nope, this is perfect. This is exactly what I'm going to do. So I think a lot of times in movies, and I'm not in movies, so I don't know this for certain, but I think a lot of times in movies, you're trying to find a child actor to fit the adult actor, and probably trying to go the reverse. You know, you got to teach the kid, okay, well, here's how you got to talk and here's how you got to do this. And this one always fascinated me because Tom Hanks did the opposite. Like, he took the kid and was like, all right, I'm a grown-up version of this kid, and this kid's great, so I'm just going to take all his mannerisms, and that's what I'm going to try to build on. So I always thought that was very, very cool. Major moment number 2, becomes a football star. His incredible running ability earns him a football scholarship to the University of Alabama eventually. He becomes football star, plays under Coach Bear Bryant, and witnesses some significant historical events, such as Governor George Wallace's stand in the schoolhouse door. He ends up being on the All-American team. We saw that in the trailer when he gets to meet President John F. Kennedy. And this is what's that? Yeah, I believe he said he has to go pee. And I'll stop here for a second, too, because that I remember watching this for the first time when this came out and seeing it in the theater, because I remember we saw it in the theater, watching it now, it's a little different. Like, you can tell it's dated. But at the time, the CGI that they did to make John F. Kennedy say something he didn't say, or Lyndon Johnson say something he did, or Richard Nixon say something he did, or John Lennon. At the time, I remember being like, how did they do that? Like, that's amazing. I've never seen anything like that before. Now, watching it now, it's like, yeah, I can,
that's extraordinary.
That's extraordinary. What would you like to?
What would you like to do next?
What would you like to green screen next, or blue screen? I guess at that point. Yeah. So no, that was one of probably the most memorable things about this movie for a kid who, even as a kid, just really liked the whole idea of how movies get made and the kind of stuff you do. To create these type of scenes. I remember there must have been some kind of behind the scenes thing that they put on TV or they put on somewhere, because I remember watching something on TV where they went through and they showed, okay, well, here's how we used computers and footage of John F. Kennedy shaking people's hands and talking to them, and here's how we took those people out and replaced them with Tom Hanks as Forrest Gump and blended him into the photo or blended him into the scene or whatever. And I just, as a kid, I was always fascinated by that. Next moment is the Vietnam War. So 1967, after college, Forrest enlists in the U.S. Army and becomes friends with Benjamin Buford Bubba Blue. They serve in Vietnam together. Their platoon is ambushed. Bubba dies in that attack. Forrest heroically saves a lot of his comrades, including Lieutenant Dan Taylor, who loses his legs. He does make a promise to Bubba after they had been serving together. They talked a lot about Bubba and his dream of becoming a shrimp boat captain, and they kind of agreed that Forrest would, go and do that with him, that he could be his first mate and they could go shrimping together, because Bubba knew everything there was to know about shrimp. Shrimp sandwiches, shrimp burgers, shrimp cocktail. Oddly enough, looking ahead towards the end of this episode, I did not include a 3 questions question about shrimp.
I thought that was odd.
I know. I thought about it. If you want to talk about your favorite shrimp while we're recording the episode, feel free. It just won't be in the 3 questions.
Shrimp scampi.
Shrimp scampi. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
The golden shrimp from Sukasa with all that butter and fat on it is still the best ever. It's just true. I mean, it's unfortunate, but that's some stuff, man.
That's how you summon the ghost of Wilford Brimley right there.
Right?
That's how you, hey, we don't do things halfway. That's how you ramp it up directly to type 3 diabetes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's see. He is awarded the Medal of Honor by President Lyndon Johnson, who gets to see the wound that jumped up and bit him right in the buttocks, on national TV, which I love. I love that. However, they did the footage of that. His whole Lyndon Johnson's. I'd like to see that sometime. And then Forrest Gump pulls his pants down, shows him. Johnson's just like, "Dang boy," and just walks away.
Yeah,
like that's probably one of
and
my
here's
favorite.
to you, Mrs. Robinson.
Yeah,
Jesus, and for some reason that music fits, and just the way that, like, they freeze and Tom Hanks is in there, and you can just see he's working it out. Like, hey, okay, well, okay,
yeah.
that was very well done.
I think I can sum up the one thing about Forrest Gump's attitude and personality that makes this movie fascinating, and just his whole story of going from one thing to the next. His response to everything, Forrest Gump's response to every single question, request, whatever, is always, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, it's an inspiring story. Like, how would one single person get themselves involved in all these different things? Like, how would he end up meeting all these presidents? How would he end up getting himself involved in giving a speech, near the Washington Monument? How would he get involved in it? I have a feeling if you're the type of person that goes through life, and there's, got to be downsides to that too, but who goes through life and your response to things is, okay, then that's the kind of life you're going to lead. You're going to lead the kind of life that you get to be a part of things when you're willing to say, yeah, okay, I'll give it a try. So that to me has always been a fun part of his character. He becomes a ping pong sensation, representing the U.S. in diplomacy with China. Leads him to a meeting with John Lennon on the Dick Cavett Show, in which he inadvertently inspires the song Imagine.
Mm-hmm.
He later, I love that scene too. He exposes the Watergate scandal after being put up in the Watergate complex by President Richard Nixon. They must be looking for a fuse box or something, because their flashlights are keeping me awake. The Bubba Gump Shrimp Company, in 1974, he fulfills his promise to Bubba, and he buys a shrimp boat, names it Jenny, starts the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company, and Lieutenant Dan ends up joining him because he kind of jokingly said, if you ever become a shrimp boat captain, I will be your first mate. And when he joins him, their boat is the only one to survive a hurricane. And at that point, then, they find massive success. And Lieutenant Dan, at that point, kind of makes his peace with God, makes his peace with Forrest having saved his life, even though he lost his legs. And ultimately, they end up not having to worry at all about any money because they invested in this nice little fruit company.
Nice little fruit company.
Which made them millionaires.
Yes.
I've probably on the podcast told you guys about this. After my dad passed away and we're going through some of the papers in his desk and stuff like that, there was a letter in his desk at his house, and it was like we got, for a half of a heartbeat, like we got all excited. It was a letter that said, it had like Apple on the top of the letterhead. It wasn't from Apple, but it was up there towards the top, and it was from an investment banker or something. Basically, the first part of the letter basically said, okay, well, here's how much Apple stock you have, and here's when you bought it, and here's how much it's worth. And we're looking at the number going, wait, what? Wait, hold on. When did Dad buy this? There's how much money in that?
Mm-hmm.
Then you get halfway through the letter, and the tone changes, and it is, or this is what you could have if you had bought Apple stock with me when I first started working back in the mid-'90s. And like, are you kidding me?
What a schmuck.
That's it. Yeah. So that was, there was like a good 10 seconds of excitement, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, yeah, all right, whatever.
This was not the droid I'm looking for.
No, that one goes in the shredder.
Yeah.
Jenny comes back. 1976, Jenny returns to Forrest after years of struggling with her past, abuse, drug addiction. They end up reconnecting. Forrest proposes to her, and she loves him, but after they sleep together, she leaves him, and that kind of leaves him a little heartbroken, a little lost. And so he just gets up one day and decides to run. So he starts running cross country. He was just going to run down to the street and run across town, then maybe across the county, and then maybe across the state. And then it just ended up being, it just kept going. Just felt like it. So I don't know what that feeling would feel like. I have not had the urge to. Pat, I know you do, but I have not had the urge to just get up and run.
Yeah.
I found that scene remarkably relatable.
I figured you would.
That whole sequence. And I believe it was after his mother passed, and he was sitting there. At least if I remember right. I wanted to jump. I think it was like the morning after or the day after, she had passed on, and he was sitting there on the porch, and boy, the way they do that, where he just sits up and it's just like, I can't sit here anymore.
Yeah.
I'm going. And then that thing, like, I'm going here. Well, I've gone this far. May as well keep going.
Yeah,
may as well keep going. And then it's just, remarkably freeing when you're like, man, I could reach all the way to this point, and so the way they did that, and then the montage scene, the running scene. And again, this was the one I read about that they had to film in secret. The other ones, I think they waived their fee for like the Vietnam and that's what allowed them to get that in the fishing boat. But this one, they just did it in secret.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad they did, because it was amazing. And I think too, I was reading about it, and this is going to get into my deeper thoughts, but I mean, so I'll try to be concise to keep it moving here, but I want to say that there was such attention to detail with historical fact. And that was one of the things Tom Hanks wanted, was like, hey, it has to be, accurate to history. And so they do all these sometimes they just state it. Sometimes it's little telltales that will tell you exactly what time in history it was. And they, at least the person that I read, identified this as 1979, because when he goes by the guy sitting in the thing on the television, they're talking about President Carter fainting at a press conference or something. And that happened in 1979. Like they had the person that wrote the article had the date on it. But I just find that interesting that, they really work in those little details to tell you, hey, we are linking this with history. Yeah. We're like, this is, or to, like you were saying, when you started doing the major moments, it links these points with a specific time.
Yeah. It's I think it's very much the same feeling, the same, what do we want to call it? Atmosphere, vibe of what I think the nostalgia that people really love about the Wonder Years. Because there's certain things within the Wonder Years TV show, like if you live during that era, I didn't live during that era, but if you live during that era, you can point to certain things on that show where there's something on the TV or there's something on the radio or something's happening that they're talking about at the dinner table, and you're like, oh yeah, that was 1960 whatever, 1970 whatever. And I think when you have movies that are like this, that kind of deftly tie in historical events that those who are going to see the movie possibly lived through, then I think it just adds that extra level of nostalgia that, I mean, you're already kind of winning people to enjoy your movie when you kind of tie in some of that stuff and do it in such a way so it's not hitting anybody over the head with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A couple things I want to mention that even going back to young Forrest for just a second, is I had written down a little note here that they were really trying to, especially during his childhood, they were really trying to get things to look a lot like Norman Rockwell paintings. And so you even have the scene where he's sitting outside the principal's office, and Rockwell has that painting. And in fact, I actually think my grandparents had a print of this painting up in their house. It was the girl with black eye sitting outside the principal's office. You guys have probably seen that one somewhere. But they tried to make a lot of the young Forrest Gump scenes, like the color tones, the color palette, and other stuff was really trying to evoke the idea of like Norman Rockwell, Americana type stuff. The other trivia fact I wanted to throw in here, because it mentions one of my favorite movies, was the narration. When Tom Hanks is doing the narration on the bench and he's narrating the rest of the movie, that I believe, my understanding is, they actually filmed all of that with him sitting on the bench and narrating those different parts, because they didn't want it to kind of go back and forth between, oh yeah, here's Forrest Gump sitting on a bench and talking to people, versus here's narration that sounds like it's being read by someone who's just in front of a microphone. So they filmed all of it as if he was on the bench having conversations with people, and then that's the audio they ended up using for the narration. And they did it that way because Robert Zemeckis had said that there was a movie that came out in 1984 that won Best Picture that he considered the most beautifully narrated movie of all time until Forrest Gump, and that was Amadeus.
There you go.
Just like you have those scenes with Salieri and he's talking with the priest, and you go back and forth between the narration and his conversation when he's older. And so very, very, very similar ideas. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting way to do it, is just have him record all those parts and then just use that same audio for the narration pieces. Forrest ends up, after he's done running, he receives a letter from Jenny and travels to go see her. And this whole reason he's sitting on the bench anyway is to try to catch the bus, until he realizes and is told that it's just a few blocks that way. So he gets up and runs. She introduces him to their son, Forrest Gump Jr., and reveals that she is terminally ill and has an incurable virus. I don't believe in the movie they ever say what virus it is. I think some people assume that it's HIV/AIDS because of her background. I believe either the director or the novelization, or not novelization, but the sequel novel says that it is hepatitis C that she has. But that's basically what she's...
vaguely what I remember.
Yeah. That is what she has. But I want to back up just a second, because I absolutely love this scene, and I love how Tom Hanks does this scene, is when she introduces him to Forrest Gump Jr. She's like, yeah, his name is Forrest. It's like, his name is Forrest? Yeah, it's named after his daddy. He's got a daddy named Forrest, too? Yeah, you're his daddy, Forrest. And then you don't tend to see, throughout the entire movie, which I think makes that part pretty powerful, you don't tend to see a lot of emotion from Forrest. In fact, I'm trying to remember how many times you do see emotion from Forrest from Tom Hanks throughout the entire movie, until you finally see him kind of choke up. Like when he realizes he has a son, when he realizes his son is intelligent and is not necessarily going to be like him and maybe have the same disadvantages that he had growing up. And I love that scene. I love his whole reaction. He kind of backs up at first like he's done something wrong, and she has to reassure him, you didn't do anything wrong. It's okay. I don't need anything from you. I don't want anything from you. You didn't do anything wrong. And that whole scene is probably one of my favorites, Tom Hanks acting of any movies I've seen him in. So knowing that she... Oh, so great. Good.
I just said agreed. Hard agree. Yeah. Totally.
So knowing that she is ill, he does invite her to move back to Greenbow, Alabama, where he can care for them. Forrest and Jenny finally get married, but their time together is pretty short, as she does succumb to her illness, and he is left to raise their son alone, and just showing how good of a father he's going to be to Forrest Jr. And the movie concludes with Forrest sending his son, Forrest Jr., off on his first day of school. And we kind of come back to the floating feather that had started off the movie for us. And he had placed it inside of a book, and it falls out of the pages of the book and ends up floating away at the end of the movie, kind of symbolizing the whole idea of hope and kind of the randomness of life. You know, this feather could have landed on anybody, and we could have seen anybody's life story here, but we just happened to see the life story of Forrest Gump, and it was pretty amazing. All right. I think we covered as much of the plot as we're going to cover here. We can probably get into some deep thoughts now.
And now, deep thoughts.
I have an opinion on this matter.
Don't mince words, Bones. What do you really think?
I like it a lot.
Wow. It's very deep. Thank you.
All right. So first time, I think I've already said this. First time I saw this, I saw it in the theater. I don't remember exactly when, but it was when it first came out. We saw it in the theater. Whole family went to go see it, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it from the get-go. Like I said, I feel like either close to or before we saw it in the theater, there was some kind of behind-the-scenes featurette that may have been put on TV at some point to show how they had done the CGI versions of the different historical characters, how you would, put these actors into historical looking video, how you put Tom Hanks' Forrest Gump in the background of a video of the University of Alabama being desegregated and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that was just fascinating to me. So I think I just, the movie had won me over, I think, before we even went to go see it, because I just was fascinated to see how this was going to look, how they did it all technically and all that. So yeah, saw it in the theater when it came out, and I've always enjoyed this movie. Like, I've seen this movie many, many times. I don't even know how many times I've seen it. It's probably been at least 10 times that I've seen this movie. But yeah, no, really, really, really enjoy this one. And Tom Hanks is amazing in this. Actually, pretty much everybody's amazing in this.
Yeah, that is true.
Based on this movie, I would cast Tom Hanks, Robin Wright, and Gary Sinise in whatever they wanted to be in.
Yeah.
Yes.
As the French say, I would give them carte blanche.
Aren't you fancy?
I try to be. Hello, Mr. Fancy Pants. What about you guys?
Bo, did you have... I was going to say, Bo, what was your experience?
I've been racking my brain since you said you saw it in the theater, trying to decide if I did. I don't think I did, because we saw a lot of things on... Excuse me, gentlemen. We saw a lot of things on HBO or rented videos back then. I don't think we saw it in the theater, but I do remember the first time we saw it, it was amazing. Like, you're sitting there going, wow, how can the same guy end up in all these places? That's outstanding. And then, John, you mentioned the technical stuff. Like, how did they do that? Like, it was just so cool. And this was one of those, like, I need to go back and look, like, where in the rise of Tom Hanks was this? But he's probably why we saw it to begin with.
Yeah.
Gary Sinise probably didn't hurt, but
right.
Yeah, I mean, it's you can get Shawshanked by this one because you can grab it anywhere. Like, once you've seen it a couple times, you don't have to see it from the beginning. You just jump in. You're like, oh, look at that, that's funny. The bits on the shrimp boat still crack me up to this day.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. You're in terms of where you are in the Tom Hanks timeline of things, right before. So, I mean, he's been doing pretty well, because right before this in '93 was Philadelphia.
Okay. Yeah. That jives with where it is in my head.
Pretty serious role in Philadelphia. Pretty heavy.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of in the timeline, you've got just prior to Philadelphia, you had A League of Their Own, Sleepless in Seattle. Then you have Philadelphia. Then you have Forrest Gump. Then immediately after Forrest Gump, you have Apollo 13, which I love some of the references. I don't know if they already knew that they were going to be in Apollo 13 together, but I love some of Gary Sinise's references to, like, being an astronaut. It's titanium. It's just like the astronauts having the space shuttle, and little lines in there. So I don't know if they already knew they were going to be in Apollo 13 at that point when they were filming Forrest Gump, but I always thought that was kind of funny. And then after that, Toy Story, Saving Private Ryan. So, I mean, you're kind of, I don't know that, has Tom Hanks had a valley in his career?
Maybe not like a total valley, but there are a few I didn't see. Like, I never saw.
I feel like maybe there was a stretch in the early to
what's the one where he's like the manager of the band? That Thing You Do.
Oh, I love that one. Yeah, That Thing You Do.
Never saw that. I never saw Castaway. Good. There were some in there that just didn't float my boat, but and they might have all been wonderful movies. They just didn't appeal to me at the time.
Right.
And I haven't made the effort to go back.
Yeah. I'll just preemptively say The Lady Killers is his valley.
Oh, okay.
I don't like that movie.
And see, I think The Burbs was some of his best works.
Oh yeah. No, we walked out of The Lady Killers.
I see.
Twas not good. Yeah. What about you, Pat? When was the first time you saw it?
You know what? I was all set to say I saw it in the theater first time, went as a family.
Okay.
Now I'm wondering if my folks saw it first and then took us as a family, or my folks saw it first and took me, because my brother and sister would be young enough that, I mean, they would have probably been in and around 13 at the time, but I don't know how much they would have been interested in the topic matter. You know what I'm saying? So either they took me to the theater, they took all of us, or they just rented it and said, hey, when that comes out, we're going to watch this as a family.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but I remember first seeing it with my family. Yeah. Everything you guys said, I very much share the thought of. Tom Hanks, amazing. And I think that's, you know, I had not, back in the day, I had not seen Philadelphia yet. But this was like right when it was, oh man, Tom Hanks, this is like, he's the real deal, you know? And I think the movie really hit because, John, like you said, you compared it to the Wonder Years, and it really, it's very much, yeah, I remember it's like, oh my gosh, all this stuff happened to this one guy. Mm-hmm. And it was like, okay, well, you know, that's a little bit of a stretch, but I almost kind of was reminded of the movie Memphis Belle. Oh, not all of this necessarily happened to this bomber on this mission and all that, but what you see is all the things that did happen in the air war kind of through their eyes. And that's kind of what I get with Forrest Gump, right? Like it's a tour through the baby boom era.
Yeah.
And you're seeing it all through his eyes. And I'll get to my reactions of the character itself in a second. But I think that very much played at that time. And now, you know, we almost derisively, we love our tribes, right? Tribalism is big. So we're part of this generation. We're part of that generation. We're part of this generation, you know, and everyone wants to take the online quiz to find out what's my generation and what would I really be and all this. Sure. And, you know, referring to, you know, the boomers, you know, that's almost like a disparaging comment now. But at this time, when this movie came out, that was basically, you know, the boomers were our age, okay, or in and about our age. And this was what the events that they grew up in. Now, obviously, if you have someone that's of a different socioeconomic class than what's portrayed, or, you know, if you came from a city as opposed to rural Alabama, mm-hmm. or, you know, I mean, you know, they would have a different type thing. But I mean, this was very much a tour through the baby boom era. And I think, you know, that was only one step away for us. So this was, I was seeing on screen portrayed what a lot of my family would talk about, right? And incidents that they would talk about. And now when we overlay that now, you know, it's interesting that people refer to, you know, like, okay, boomer, but now like, hey, let's watch a film and see, you know, they're out of, okay, that's your grandparents' generation, but take a look at what your grandparents, you know, the events that they went through. And I'm kind of doing the time like, okay, well, from when this movie came out, go back in time. That would be like movies coming out now talking about September 11th, or movies coming up now talking about the wars, you know, that we've been fighting for the last 20 years and all that. This would be movies now looking back on like the 1980s. And it's like, oh man, because I mean, I get positively giddy with the idea of Stranger Things. Or what? Wonder Woman, the second Wonder Woman was set in the 1980s. That's fantastic. You know, like, so I think this movie was very much just kind of enticing is kind of the wrong word, but I mean, it works, was enticing for folks of that baby boom generation just because it portrayed that. And there was such an attention to detail. And I remember, like I said, when we were talking about the major moments, that was a big thing for Tom Hanks, just the attention to detail. And we have to set this, you know, as in as much fact as possible. Gary Sinise, I mean, a fantastic actor, and I know is a huge advocate, as we all know, huge advocate for veterans' rights and veterans, you know, telling their story and support for, you know, our nation's veterans. And so I think that was really allowed him to, portray that and the struggle and the post-traumatic stress disorder and what it was like coming out of Vietnam and all of that. And, the use of the music, the use of just everything. And that's what I was watching this time. I'm like, man, this movie really shows you many different facets, right? Like life in a small town, life trying to, playing college football. Okay. The peace movement. Okay. Vietnam and those war. I mean, they got it inside the PG-13 rating, but boy, the war footage is the wrong word. What am I trying to say? The war scenes. I mean, that was epic's the wrong word. I'm using a lot of wrong words tonight. I mean, that was scary. That portrayed the horrors of war within the PG-13 rating. The shrimp boat scenes were fantastic. I mean, they just have so much attention to detail that they really tell these stories in a very authentic way. And then when you throw Forrest Gump in there, there's just so much heart. And like you said, is okay. And people have, I did some reading. It was okay. He had a real low IQ, didn't want to be called stupid. And he was very intuitive with, in some ways, like I'm getting my sea legs. Yeah, but you don't have sea legs. But then he could intuit things, right? Like when Jenny was getting up on the bridge, suddenly the look on his face is, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. Like he could tell that there was something wrong. Yeah. When he sees a situation, like he's not victim to that bigger picture. And so he looks at these situations in history or situations in his life, and he has a very simplistic approach to it, one with a lot of heart, and it's kind of like the simplest way through. And it's kind of like a lesson in, hey, how much of our life, if we just look at it simplistically, maybe isn't the easy choice, but it's the right choice, and that was kind of what made Forrest Gump such a strong character. Is he was usually making the right choice in things. He kind of just had this simple morality that he would act on. He was just such a good individual. And so I think the movie, like I said, it has that love letter to the baby boom generation, but then everything is, the character is portrayed with such good, and all he does is just give to the people around him. It's heartwarming. It's just a beautiful story.
Well, and when you say that he really, even though everybody says he's different, he's not smart, it's interesting. I found a quote by one of the producers, Steve Starkey, who said, and this is a direct quote from him, I always thought it was sort of like a Hitchcock MacGuffin or something, that Forrest was dumb because it's something that everybody follows as though it's just true. But in fact, actually has no real meaning, in the sense, I think he was actually smart. And that really, it comes across quite a bit in the movie as you watch the entire movie. He himself even says, I may not be a smart man. And people think of him, they keep asking him, are you stupid or something? But he's not. And if you really watch his character, does he necessarily pick up on every little social cue? No. Does he have a ridiculous amount of book knowledge and book learning? No. Is he a smart man? Absolutely he is. Like the way he handles situations, the wisdom that he uses, and like you said, the simplicity, almost like there's almost wisdom in simplicity. As I was saying earlier, his whole thing of, well, what's his response to most things? Okay. Like, you're not going to have the opportunities he had unless you're willing to say okay to more things than you're going to say no to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
When he first meets, looks like, and you said picking up on the social cues, right? Like, where are you from? Alabama, sir. Are you guys related? And they look at each other. No, like, what's wrong with this guy? No, we're not related. We're not relations. And then he starts talking, and I love it because then he starts talking about Arkansas. They're not from Arkansas, they're from Alabama. And then he walks off. It's like, yeah, Little Rock's a fine place. Yeah. And it was just like, it. And I laugh. I laugh because I'm approaching it like, I'm approaching it like a teacher going in and you meet a kid and like you're talking to a student and you're like try and get it right, but you get it wrong, and then the kid's probably like, oh God, he's not getting my name, or he's just because there's so many people, and I laugh. But then you think about the deeper meaning to that, and this is the nuances. Like, okay, how many people has Lieutenant Dan seen in his time there that have been killed? Right. That he maybe only knew for a couple. So it's like there's got those levels of humor, but then all of a sudden the movie's, it's like the box of chocolates comment. There's these deeper meanings behind the thing, and they do it without hitting you over a head. They paint a reality that, oh man, when you think about that, it's like, ugh, okay.
Well, and I don't have a hard time believing that he, they said Alabama and he's thinking Arkansas, because within his company alone, he's got Cleveland, who was from Detroit. He's got, I forget what the other guy's name was, but the one guy who was from here, and Tex, I don't remember where Tex was from.
I don't remember that one.
Yeah.
So it's it's quite a movie.
Yeah. I wanted to read one more quote, and we could talk about this for a second before we wrap up and head into the 3 questions. But Robert Zemeckis wanted to make sure, he had Alan Silvestri as the composer for this one, but he also wanted to use famous pop songs to kind of mark the timeline. We, like you were saying, Pat, you see things on the TV and you can go, oh yeah, that event was 1959, or that event is 1963 or whatever. And this is a quote from Robert Zemeckis. He said, "What I said to the sound team and to Alan Silvestri, and the editors is that we should use the records as if there was a radio on in these scenes. In my generation, everybody always listened to the same music. Everybody always had the same records. You could go into any 16-year-old's house. He would have the exact same records as every other 16-year-old in America. It was just one of those phenomenon. So we could use that as signposts to history."
Yes.
Which is awesome. Like, I think that's a great way. Now, I have to throw it in there. I'm going to say, I'm not sure every 16-year-old had all the same records. 16-year-olds that would have been like Robert Zemeckis would have had all the same records. So
right.
There would have been different cultures, and there would have been different folks all around America at that time. So I'm going to point that out as my, 21st century self making that comment. So not everybody had the same thing. However, I do like that is the way that they mark time in this movie, is to say, let's just pretend there's always a radio on, or somebody's always playing a record somewhere. And what would you hear? If you were walking through this scene and it's this year in time, what would you expect to hear playing on the radio?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a great way to create little mile markers throughout the movie.
Yes.
All right. We have anything else we want to say about the movie before we head on into our 3 questions? Awesome movie. Very, very quotable. Most of the quotes, as Bo mentioned, are in the trailer. I feel a little bit like it's similar to the trailer. I'd have to go back and listen to the trailer, but I feel like it's how the trailer of Good Morning Vietnam reminds me of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're going to get so much of the like real funny lines, like some of the major beats of the movie. You're going to get it in the trailer. And I don't know if that's because we're 30 years out from this movie. We've seen it so many times that these lines are memorable because we've seen them over and over again, or we've heard them over and over again. But to your point, they did give away a lot in the trailer.
And it just, and it's funny because I remember thinking that was an epidemic for a while. They were doing a lot of that.
Yeah.
So it just kind of took me by surprise, right. I guess.
All right. Well, if there are no further questions or objections from the jury, then we will head on into our 3 questions.
He asks each traveler 5 questions. 3 questions. 3 questions.
It's impossible to answer.
Impossible because you don't know the answer.
Nobody could answer that question.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. I want to have them answered immediately.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
All right, question number 1. What is your favorite kind of chocolate that you would get from a box of chocolates?
Anything Frango.
That was one of the responses at our house.
And I mean anything when I say that. Like, I'm kind of into most of the Frango flavors.
Okay.
There's a few that are a little off the wall, but for the most part, I'm in. Like,
honestly,
anything with that Frango label, I want to try.
Okay. Honestly, I've not ventured too far away from either the caramel or the mint.
Oh, there's some good ones hiding in there, my friend. The Toffee Crunch is very good.
Okay.
They have one, you know how
infinite diversity and infinite combinations, would you say?
Indeed.
Yeah.
You know how sometimes you get a box of chocolates and they're all filled with cordials or liquor?
Yes.
They have a Frango version of that is chef's kiss wonderful.
Okay.
And like I said, there are a couple of the cake batter one.
Okay.
I've never really understood the allure of cake battered flavored other things.
Yeah.
Like the cake batter ice cream doesn't do it for me either.
Yeah. Finish the cake.
Right. It's cake.
Yeah.
What in the actual heck? It's cake.
Yeah.
That's just me though.
Okay.
I tend to like the chocolates with like the fruit taste in them, like cherry or I mean they don't usually tend to be up in a box of chocolates, but like chocolate covered strawberries, I guess so. It's usually the cherries that go in there. Those tend to be the ones that I like.
Okay.
But what you said with the Frangos are great because you can just, you could eat a box of them, or you could just put like one of those suckers in your mouth and just kind of like let it melt and.
Mine are going to be, I like the kind of the soft nougaty ones, and it can be like some of the different flavors. Like sometimes they have the little strawberry kinds, or if there's a chocolate covered cherry in there. The one I'm always going to go for every single time is coconut. If you got some coconut in there, I'm. If it's a Mounds or an Almond Joy type situation, I'm all in.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Question number 2 depending on, I don't know, might have been more or less difficult for Bo and myself versus Pat. But if you were going to run across the United States, I can preface this by saying, let's say you have the desire and skill as well that has been magically granted to you.
Wow.
Because, Bo, that's the only way I'm answering this question. If you were going to run across the United States, what route would you take? And you can go diagonally, you can go north, south, south, north, east, west, west, east, however you want to go. Which direction would you go? Like what states would you want to pass through, I guess? What's your route that you run across the country?
If I was going to do something as ridiculous as you suggest.
Yeah.
That's actually tough. And I'm going to cheat because I think Forrest does it and then does it back, right?
Yeah.
So I think if I was going to do it, I would probably take a northerly route one way and a southerly route the other.
Okay.
If only because there are things I want to see on both routes. Like I've never been a traveler, so there's a lot I want to see that I haven't seen.
Okay.
Like I want to see Mount Rushmore and Devil's Tower, and I want to see the Grand Canyon and some of the ghost towns of Nevada, and I'd like to stand by the fence at Area 51 and see if they shoot at me, those sort of things. And I feel like to hit all of those, you'd kind of have to do a pass north and a pass south, and yeah.
Patrick, is this something that you lay awake at night thinking about? Like, is this, if you were to plan out, if they were to plan out a route across the country?
I do, because honestly, I'm happy to say that as this school year dawns, I kind of have the end in sight. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Not quite like, I'm ready to say, hey, this is my freshman year type end in sight, but like I got to start planning. and it is something that I've toyed with, and I've talked to Tammy about this. Like, hey, how would you like to take a road trip and drive a chase vehicle? You know, the kids will be in college or beyond or something, you know?
Yeah.
So I do think about that. And I, you know, and then you ask that question, I'm like, but where, I've never really thought about the destination much. It's always just been like, hey, I'll go to wherever I end up.
Yeah.
I'd have to aim for the coasts. I love the water.
Sure.
I'd love to get to the ocean. I think it would maybe be zigzag, kind of like Bo was describing. There was someone online that traced out the route based on the clues in the movie, like which route he ran.
Yeah, yeah.
Which was kind of fun to look at. But yeah, you know, there'd be some major points, like the Grand Canyon is kind of what we're talking about, going to see next as a family.
Yeah.
You know, that would be cool. It would be cool to like go to the four corners, right? You know, the four corners of the continental United States.
Mm-hmm.
It would be cool to say I'm running to Alaska. You know, that would be crossing borders. But I mean, like that would be awesome. It would be fun just to visit people. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, hey, I can connect the dots with my family where before it was a plane or a car trip, and I do it on foot.
Yeah.
And I mean, I only mean this not even half jokingly, but only partially. I mean, maybe I'll just go find Dennis, because by the time I retire, he'll have been gone for a number of years. And, you know, he's kind of got plans to disappear into, you know, various state parks and national parks and nature and all that. So I don't know, maybe that'll be something I'll just, you know, and then I can write a memoir about it, you know, searching for Dennis Matuch.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of was my thought. So yeah, I don't know, but yeah, I do lay in bed and wonder, what would it look like? You know, I've got a colleague. We have a colleague whose husband's been hiking the Appalachian Trail.
Oh yeah.
And you know, it's been fun to check that out, and yeah, just like I said, have the gears turning.
Yeah,
So.
I was looking at, because I think I found that same map that you were talking about, where they talk about that being his route that he would have taken.
Mm-hmm.
And it is pretty much all over the country. I think because at one point he just runs across the South until he gets to about San Diego or San Diego-ish. And then from San Diego, so I think this is the route I was going to take, that I would have considered taking, was he goes from about San Diego on the coast. And then his next stop is Maine. So he kind of runs diagonally from southwest to northeast.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's that one. The other one, though, because I've always been kind of fascinated by the idea, and Dennis has mentioned it before, there's that Zephyr train that runs from, is it run from Chicago to California?
I think so.
Okay. I'm seeing one on the
Dennis
map of
the
Forrest
guy.
Gump's routes that he would have taken. There is a route that goes cuts from Chicago and goes up through Wisconsin, Minnesota, North Dakota, Montana, Idaho, Washington, and then stops kind of on the Washington coast. Or is it, maybe it's Oregon. I don't know. I can't quite tell here on the map. But that would be a nice one too, like to kind of go along the northernmost part of the country.
Yes.
I've been to a lot of the southern states, so I wouldn't mind doing the northern part.
Yeah, check out something new.
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome.
All right, and final question. Forrest Jr. is watching Sesame Street late in the movie. Who do you relate to most? Are you a Bert or are you an Ernie?
Might be a little too cranky to be Bert.
I don't know. Bert can get kind of cranky.
Yeah. I guess I always picture Ernie yelling at Bert, but maybe it's also been a while since I've watched Sesame Street.
No. Ernie's the easygoing one. He's the one that's like always being crazy and easygoing. And
oh, well then, yeah, I've got him backwards in my head somehow.
Okay.
And yeah, because I'm the cranky.
Yeah, Bert's the one that looks
Let's put it this way. I'm the cranky one.
Okay. Yeah, you'd be Bert then. Bert's the one that looks like a walking banana.
Oh, that sounds about right.
Yeah, Ernie's the orange.
I totally have
Ernie's
him
the orange
in my
and
head.
Ernie's the orange and Bert's the banana.
See, in my head, I had the faces right, but the names were backwards.
Yeah.
So I understand now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Ernie!
I think it depends on the situation. I think I got a little bit of Ernie and Bert, and it just depends on what situation I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
I've found in, dealing with my family. Sometimes with my son, I tend to be Bert.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes with my daughter, I tend to be Ernie, kind of based on what they need.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But yeah, and Bo, you bring up a good point. I think I need to go back and just watch some Sesame Street because I remember them. I don't remember them as like the individual. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's another layer that I hadn't really processed.
I think I'm very much an Ernie. Now, there are moments where a little Bertness comes across.
No, I hear you.
But I think I'm an Ernie. In fact, the first question I got when I asked this to my family at dinner was, so which one is the worrier? I go, oh, that would be Bert. Okay, well, then I'm Bert. Yeah. Ernie's always a little crazy. And then growing up as a kid, we had a bunch of those like Sesame Street Little Golden books. And Ernie was always causing problems in there. And Ernie was always a little kind of crazy, and Bert was kind of like the straight-laced one. I mean, Bert's the one that he loved pigeons, and what was his collection? He had like a pencil collection. I don't know. He had some like weird nerdy collection that he had. Yeah.
I remember his love of pigeons.
Yes. Yeah. So, all right. That's going to do it for 3 questions. That's going to do it for this episode. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. The rest of the month of August, it's our Outside the Ordinary month. Patreon, we've got Damselvis, Daughter of Helvis. Patreon short is Alien Romulus from this year. We have the Episode 1, The Phantom Menace Love Fest that we did at the beginning of the month. Highlander 2, The Crappening. Hudsucker Proxy, Ed Wood. Last time was Deadpool and Wolverine. This time is Forrest Gump. And then we're going to end the month with Immortal Beloved. So we've got a lot of really, really good stuff coming up this month. And we've already had this month. And then we're looking forward to very, very soon is Halloween time. And I'm excited for that because I love spooky. So, as always, thank you, gents, for being here. Always a good time.
Thank you, as always, John, for keeping us here and on task.
I try to. Eventually, I will let you guys out of the cell that I've locked you in. Someday.
I think Stockholm Syndrome is set in. We wouldn't know what to do with ourselves anyway.
That's good. That's all right. You can consider me your Florence Nightingale. I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, that was an odd statement, but
it kind of was. Yeah.
Whatever works for you, I guess.
That's very different than the Stockholm Syndrome.
It is.
I don't know. There's some kind of syndrome in there somewhere. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I may not be a smart man, but I know when to sign off. So I think it's time to go.
Bring the lights down low, it's time to show. Lights, camera, you know what we mean. Behold the magic of the silver screen. Some movies rock, some movies shock, they're powerful, alright. We cover them all on your favorite part. So many movies we can't choose, even when you win, you lose. Life moves pretty fast, some will fizzle and some movies last. I understood there would be no math, it's the 30-something movie podcast. Be excellent to each other, please add a word to your mother. They're from the best decades, movie magic that never fades. Lightsabers clash, phasers set to stun. Action packed from dusk till dawn. We have deep thoughts and questions free. Come share our love of the movies we see. Life moves pretty fast, some will fizzle and some movies last. I understood there